Mr. Toastmaster, Madam President, fellow members and most welcome guests, history is, as I like to call it, just a big adventure story that the great C.S. Lewis or Tolkien themselves could not have foreseen or written. With real-life Game of Thrones called Succession Wars, epic battles all over the globe and conflict spanning entire nations and continents. But the most interesting thing sometimes, hidden in the meanders of history as one peruses it, are the own stories of the men and women that shaped it and took part in it. This is one of these stories. 1899. The British empires on which the sun never sets stand atop the globe like a mighty colossus. It is, however, a nation at war. Arrayed against the might of the empire are two plucky Boer republic, Orange and Transvaal, and this war will decide their destiny. In Great Britain, a 25-year-old man embarked on a journey as war correspondent for the Morning Post newspaper. The journey should be exciting, going up to the front line. His name, Mr. Winston Churchill. As he arrives in Durban, the next part of the journey is slated to take place in the safety of an armoured train. There are guns, armoured cars, planes, and whole battalions of soldiers defending it. What could go wrong as he goes on the exciting journey to the front line? The train is, however, ambushed, and the soldiers defending it fight back with all they can. Winston himself grabs a gun and joins the melee. But the Boers commandos have got guns, machine guns, and heavy artillery. A soldier raised an Kerchief to Churchill's disgust as a direct disobedience of the orders that no surrender was to be made. Our hero, bleeding, and 50 or so British soldiers are now prisoners of war and marched out to Pretoria. The captor seems not cruel men, as Churchill says, and some of them even know who his father is, the great Lord Randolph Churchill, recently deceased, a famous politician, and therefore our hero tries his luck and say, "I demand that you free me immediately." To get answered with laughter and chuckles, and, "You will be able to play football in Pretoria." And off he bundled off and marched to Pretoria, the Boers' capital. While there, he's imprisoned in the States Model School. In peacetime, this is a girls' boarding school. There are worse places for a man to be imprisoned, maybe. And there he befriends Mr. de Souza, the Boer Secretary of War. Boer hospitality is very generous. The menu is exquisite. Boiled beef, boiled potatoes, and stale black bread. There are no cigars whatsoever, and definitely no whiskey. Therefore, one thing is on Winston's mind: evasion, escape. So he pens a letter to Mr. de Souza saying, "Sir, as I do not believe that your government has the authority to hold me as a prisoner of war, I have decided to leave the hospitality of your custody." This letter is to be left after he leaves. But just before he escapes, he needs one more thing. He needs a gun, I can hear you say. Now there's barbed wire, he needs a bolt cutter. No, he needs a partner in crime, the two of them would be safer together. He just needs a hat to cover himself. This is the 19th century, after all, where everyone was wearing hats. And he permanently borrows a vicar's hat for this purpose. And armed with it, he jumps over the wall of the school and lands in a nearby garden. Free at last. Marching out, following the railway track. Destination: Lourenço Marques, Portuguese East Africa. The trek is only about 300 miles away. Piece of cake. He jumps on the train. And he hides himself among coal sacks. But in the meantime, the alarm has been raised. The prisoner has escaped! Blasted up, blasted all over the South African belt. Wanted, dead or alive. A dangerous individual. Name: Winston Churchill. Reward: £25. Not much these days, isn't it? A few days later, he's marching off in the veldt, hungry, thirsty, without no shelter, and his only company is a vulture flying above his head that seemed rather interested in my fate, as he would write later. With no other option, he knocks on a door in a village. A man with a pistol replies. As luck might have it, the man is British, John Howard. He's a mine owner, and for the next 3 days he will hide Winston Churchill safely at the bottom of his mine shaft before bundling him off on the next train bound for Lorenzo Marquez, and there, among woolen bales, he hides. The journey is due to take 16 hours. Quite a slow train, isn't it? It takes 3 days, including a very long, excruciating wait at the border as Beauregard perused the contents of the train very thoroughly. Churchill does not sleep because he would snore and reveal his position to the guards. Sounds like it was quite a near snorer, wasn't he? Eventually he makes it to Lorenzo Marquez, safe at last, in a dishevelled state, looking like a beggar. The British consul is convinced of his identity after a few tries, and he's going back to South Africa, bundled off back to Durban, South Africa, at his request. The Empire's rejoiced at the news. The man has escaped the Boer. He's free at last. What happens now? He even gets letters from Oldham constituency, where he's due to stand as an MP, saying, "Sir, I was voting for the previous candidate before, but now I'll be voting for you, since you've escaped." A few months later, we would receive the surrender of the 52 Boer prison camp guard as the British Army took over Pretoria. An escape from South Africa that didn't seem like much at the time. Well, after all, there had been other successful escape before. But thanks to that, later in the year, he became the Member of Parliament for Holborn, starting off a journey that would lead to World War II and Prime Ministership. An escape from South Africa that made a great destiny possible. Toastmasters.